Alright, welcome back. Starting Chapter 3, Watson. You lost your temper, Ullman had said. Okay, here's your furnace, Watson said, turning on a light in the dark, musty-smelling room. He was a beefy man with fluffy popcorn hair, white shirt, and dark green chinos. He swung open a small square grating in the furnace's belly, and he and Jack peered in together. This here's the pilot light. A steady blue-white jet hissing steadily upward channeled destructive force. But the key word, Jack thought, was destructive and not channeled. If you stuck your hand in there, the barbecue would happen in 3 quick seconds. Lost your temper. Danny, are you all right? The furnace filled the entire room, by far the biggest and oldest Jack had ever seen. The pilot's got a failsafe, Watson told him. Little sensor in there measures heat. If the heat falls below a certain point, it sets off a buzzer in your quarters. Boiler's on the other side of the wall. I'll take you around. He slammed the grating shut and led Jack behind the iron bulk of the furnace toward another door. The iron radiated a stuporous heat at them, and for some reason Jack thought of a large dozing cat. Watson jingled his keys and whistled. Lost your... When he went back into his study and saw Danny standing there wearing nothing but his training pants and a grin, a slow red cloud of rage had eclipsed Jack's reason. It had seemed slow subjectively inside his head, but it must have all happened in less than a minute. It only seemed slow the way some dreams seem slow. The bad ones. Every door and drawer in his study seemed to have been ransacked in the time he had been gone. Closet, cupboards, the sliding bookcase. Every desk drawer yanked out to the stop. His manuscript. The 3-act play he had been slowly developing from a novelette he had written 7 years ago as an undergraduate, was scattered all over the floor. He had been drinking a beer and doing the Act 2 corrections when Wendy said the phone was for him, and Danny had poured the can of beer all over the pages, probably to see it foam. See it foam, see it foam. The words played over and over in his head like a single sick chord on an out-of-tune piano. Many, many metaphors. That's the one thing I love about Stephen King is his metaphors. Completing the circuit of his rage, or metaphor, simile, same thing. Kind of. Well, basically. He stepped deliberately toward his 3-year-old son, who was looking up at him with that pleased grin, his pleasure at the job of work so successfully and recently completed in Daddy's study. Danny began to say something, and that was when he had grabbed Danny's hand and bent it to make him drop the typewriter eraser and the mechanical pencil he was clenching in it. Danny had cried out a little, "No, no, tell the truth," he screamed. It was all hard to remember through the fog of anger, the sick single thump of that one Spike Jones chord. Wendy somewhere asking what was wrong, her voice faint, damped by the inner mist. This was between the two of them. He had whirled Danny around to spank him, his big adult fingers digging into the scant meat of the boy's forearm, meeting around it in a closed fist, and the snap of the breaking bone had not been loud. Not loud, but it had been very loud. Huge, but not loud. Just enough of a sound to slit through the red fog like an arrow. But instead of letting in sunlight, that sound let in the dark clouds of shame and remorse, the terror, and the agonizing convulsion of the spirit. A clean sound with the past on one side of it, and all the future on the other. A sound like a breaking pencil lead, or a small piece of kindling when you brought it down over your knee. A moment of utter silence on the other side, in respect to the beginning future maybe, all the rest of his life. Seeing Danny's face drained of color until it was like cheese. Seeing his eyes always large grow grow larger still, and glassy. Jack, sure the boy was going to faint dead away into the puddle of beer and papers, his own voice, weak and drunk, slurry, trying to take it all back, to find a way around that not too loud sound of bone cracking and into the past. Is there a status quo in the house? Saying, Danny, are you alright? Danny's answering shriek, then Wendy's shocked gasp as she came around them and saw the peculiar angle Danny's forearm had to his elbow. No arm was meant to hang quite that way in a world of normal families. Her own scream as she swept him into her arms in a nonsense babble. Oh God, Danny, oh dear God, oh sweet God, your poor sweet arm. And Jack was standing there, stunned and stupid, trying to understand how a thing like this could have happened. He was standing there, and his eyes met the eyes of his wife, and he saw that Wendy hated him. It did not occur to him what the hate might mean in practical terms. It was only later that he realized she might have left him that night, gone to a motel, gotten a divorce lawyer in the morning, or called the police. He, He saw only that his wife hated him, and he felt staggered by it, all alone. He felt awful. This was what oncoming death felt like. Then she fled for the telephone and dialed the number, and dialed the hospital with her screaming boy wedged in the crook of her arm. And Jack did not go after her. He only stood in the ruins of his office, smelling beer and thinking, "You lost your temper." Hello? Shut the door. Different one. What? He rubbed his hand harshly across his lips and followed Watson into the boiler room. It was humid in here, but it was more than the humidity that brought the sick and slimy sweat onto his brow and stomach and legs. The remembering did that. It was a total thing that made that night 2 years ago seem like 2 hours ago. There was no lag. It brought the shame and revulsion back. The sense of having no worth at all. And that feeling always made him want to have a drink. And the wanting of a drink brought still blacker despair. Would he have would he ever have an hour? Or would he, yeah. Not a week or even a day, mind you, but just one waking hour when the craving for a drink wouldn't surprise him like this. The boiler, Watson announced. He pulled a red and blue bandana from his back pocket, blew his nose with a decisive honk, and thrust it. What are you doing? And thrust it back out of sight after a short peek into it to see if he had gotten anything interesting. What are you doing? You did. I didn't cut it for. He did. He did. The boiler stood on 4 cement blocks along cut this off. A long and cylindrical metal tank, copper jacketed and often patched. It squatted beneath a confusion of pipes and ducts which zigzagged upward into a high, cobweb-festooned basement ceiling. To Jack's right, two large heating pipes came through the wall from the furnace in the adjoining room. Pressure gauge is here. Watson tapped it. Pounds per square inch PSI. I guess you'd know that. I got her up to 100 now. And the room gets a little chilly at night. Few guests complain. Explicitive there. They're crazy to come up here in September anyway. Besides, this is an old day. What are you doing? You. What are you doing? Picking your nose. Yeah, I see you. They're crazy to come up here in September anyway. Besides, this is an old baby. Got more patches on her than a pair of welfare overalls. Out came the bandana. A honk, a peek, back it went. I got me a cold, Watson said conversationally. I get one every September. I be tinkering down here with this old girl, expletive. Uh, then I'll be out cutting the grass or raking the rope court. Get a chill and catch a cold, my old mum used to say. God bless her, she been dead 6 year. Cancer got her. Once the cancer gets you, you might as well make up your will. Make your will. Uh, you want to keep your press up to no more than 50, maybe 60. Mr. Oman, he says to heat the west. He says to heat the west wing one day, central wing the next, east wing the day after. Ain't he a crazy man? I hate him. Yap, 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 all the living long day. He's just like one of those little old dogs that bite you on the ankle, then run around and pee all over the rug. If if brains were black powder, he couldn't blow his own nose. It's a pity the things you see when you ain't got a gun. You leaving? No, you ain't leaving. You'll say you're gonna leave. Shut the door. So many explicitives in this book. I had to change dialogue every now and then. Alright, so we got a Cajun, obvious, some sort of hick here. Uh, maybe from my neck of the woods. Look here. You open and close these ducts by pulling these rings. I got 'em all marked for you. The blue tags all go to the rooms in the east wing. Red tags in the middle. Yellow is the west wing. When you go to heat the west wing, you gotta remember that that's the side of the hotel that really catches the weather. When it whoops, these rooms get as cold as a frigid woman with an ice cube up her works. Interesting. You can run your press all the way up to 80 on West Wing days. I would anyway. The thermostat upstairs, Jack began. Watson shook his head vehemently. I haven't pronounced that word in so long I forgot how to pronounce it. Making his fluffy hair bounce on his skull. They ain't hooked up. They're just there for show. Some of these people from California, they don't think things is right unless they got it hot enough to grow a palm tree in their fucking bedroom. All the heat comes from down here. Gotta watch the press though. See her creep? He tapped the main dial, which had crept from 100 pounds per square inch to 102, as Watson soliloquized. That's too big a word for me, and I know big words. SOLI LOQUICED. Jack felt a sudden shiver cross his back in a hurry and thought, the goose just walked over my grave. Okay. Meaning he's got to chill. Then Watson gave the pressure wheel a spin and dumped the boiler off. There was a great hissing, and the needle dropped back to 91. Watson twisted the valve shut, and the hissing died reluctantly. She creeps, Watson said. You tell that fat little Peckerwood Ullman he drags out the account books and spends 3 hours showing how we can't afford a new one until 1982. I tell you this, the whole place is gonna go sky high someday, and I just hope that fat fuck's here to ride the rocket. God, I wish I could be as charitable as my mother was. She could see the good in everyone. Me, I'm just as mean as the snake with the shingles. What the fuck? A man can't help his nature. Now you gotta remember to come down here twice a day and once at night before you rack it. You gotta check the press. If you forget, it'll just creep, and like it's not you and your family will wake up on the fucking moon. You just dump her off a little and you'll have no trouble. What's top end? Oh, she's rated for 250, but she'll blow long before that now. You couldn't get me to come down here and stand next to her when the dial was up to 180. There's no automatic shutdown? Doing the voice for some. There's no automatic shutdown? No, there ain't. This was built before such things were required. Federal government's into everything these days, ain't it? FBI opening mail, CIA bugging the goddamn phones. And look what's happened to that Nixon. Wasn't that a sorry sight? But if you just come down here regular and check the press, you'll be fine. And remember to switch those ducks around like he wants. Won't none of the rooms get much above 45 unless we have an amazing warm winter.
Just now, on my blueberry muffins.
Yeah?
Nani did that. Tore her bite off.
Oh, good. Alright. Thank you. I'll eat after this check. Won't none of the rooms get much above 45 unless we have an amazing warm winter. And you'll have your own apartment just as warm as you like it. What about the plumbing? Okay, I was just getting to that. Over here through this arc. I want to see how long this chapter is. Oh, it's... Alright, just 2 more pages. Oh, what's that combined? They walked into a long rectangular room that seemed to stretch for miles. Watson pulled a cord and a single 75-watt bulb cast a sickish, swinging glow over the area they were standing in. Straight ahead was the bottom of the elevator shaft, heavy grease cables descending to pulleys 25 feet diameter, and a huge grease-clogged motor. Newspapers were everywhere, bundled and banded and boxed. Other cartons were marked records or invoices or receipts. Save. The smell was yellow and moldy. Some of the cartons were falling apart, spilling yellow, flimsy sheets that might have been 20 years old out onto the floor. Jack stared around, fascinated. The Overlook's entire history might be here, buried in these rotting cartons. That elevator's a bitch to keep running, Watson said, jerking his thumb at it. I know. Ullman's buying the state elevator inspector a few fancy dinners to keep the repairman away from that fucker. Now here's your central plumbing core. In front of them, 5 large pipes, each of them wrapped in insulation and cinched with steel bands, rose into the shadows and out of sight. Watson pointed to a cobwebby shelf beside the utility shaft. There were a number of greasy rags on it and a loose leaf binder. That there is all your plumbing schematics, he said. I don't think you'll have any trouble with leaks, never has been. But sometimes the pipes freeze up. Only way to stop that is to run the faucets a little bit during the nights. But there's over 400 taps in this fucking place. That fat fairy upstairs would scream all the way to Denver when he saw the water bill. Ain't that right? I'd say that's a remarkably astute analysis. Watson looked at him admiringly. Say, you really are a college fellow, aren't you? Talk just like a book. I admire that as long as the fella ain't one of them fairy boys. Lots of 'em are. You know who stirred up all those college riots a few years ago? The homosexuals, that's who. They get frustrated and have to cut loose, coming out of the closet, they call it. Holy shit, I don't know what the world's coming to. Now if she freezes, she most likely gonna freeze right up in this shaft. No heat, you see. If it happens, use this. I don't know where I'm getting this accent from. He reached into the broken orange crate and produced a small gas torch. You just unstrap the insulation when Now the accent's messing me up. You just unstrap the insulation when you find the ice plug and put the heat right to her. Get it? Yes, but what if a pipe freezes outside the utility core? That won't happen if you're doing your job and keeping the place heated. You can't get to the other pipes anyway. Don't you fret about it. You'll have no trouble. Beastly place down here. Cobwebby. Gives me the horrors, it does. Ullman said the first winter caretaker killed his family and himself. Yeah, that Grady guy. He was a bad actor. I knew that the minute I saw him, always grinning like an egg-stuck dog. That was when they were just starting out here, and that fat Ullman would have hired the Boston Strangler if he'd have worked for minimum wage. Was the Wrangler from was the ranger from the national park that found him. The phone was out. All of 'em up in the west wing on the third floor froze solid. Too bad about the little girls. 8 and 6 they was. Cute as cut bottoms. Oh, that was a hell of a mess. That Ullman, he manages some honky-tonk resort place down in Florida in the off-season, and he caught a plane up to Denver and hired a sleigh to take him up here from Sidewinder because the roads were closed. A sleigh. Can you believe that? He about split a gut trying to keep it out of the papers. Did pretty well, I gotta give him that. There was an item in the Denver Post, and of course the obituary in that pissant little rag they had down in ST's Park. But that was just about all. Pretty good considering the reputation this place has got. I expected some reporter would dig it all up and just sort of put Grady in it as an excuse to rake over the scandals. What scandals? Watson shrugged. Any big hotel got scandals, he said. Just like every big hotel's got a ghost. Why? People come and go. Sometimes one of 'em will pop off in his room, heart attack or stroke or something like that. Hotels are superstitious places. No 13th floor or room 13. No mirrors on the back of the door you come in through, stuff like that. Why, we lost a lady just last July. Ullman had to take care of that, and you can bet he did. I'm changing the dialogue. I don't like swearing that much. That's why they pay him $22,000 a season for it. And as much as I dislike the guy, he earns it. It's like some people just come here to throw up, and they hire a guy like Ullman to clean up the messes. Here's this woman, must be 60 years old, my age, and her hair's, excuse me, having a hard time keeping this accent. And her hair is dyed just as red as a prostitute's. Spotlight. Breast sagging just about down to her belly button on account of she ain't wearing no brassiere. Big varicose veins all up and down her legs so they look like a couple of road maps. The jewels dripping off her neck and arms and hanging out of her ears. She's got this kid with her. He can't be more than 17, with hair down to his posterior, and his crotch bulging like he done stuffed it with the funny pages. So they're here a week, 10 days maybe, and every night it's the same drill. Down in the Colorado Lounge, from 5 to 7, her sucking up Singapore slings like they're gonna outlaw 'em tomorrow, and him with just the one bottle of Olympia sucking it, making it last. And she'd be making jokes and saying all these witty things, and every time she said one, he'd just grin like an ape, like she had strings tied to the corners of his mouth. Only after a few days you could see it was getting harder and harder for him to grin. I'm changing voices for some reason. And God knows what he had to think about to get his pump primed by bedtime. Well, they'd go in for dinner, him walking and her staggering drunk as a coot, and he'd be pinching the waitresses and grinning at 'em when she wasn't looking. We even had bets on how long he'd last. Then he comes down one night around 10 saying his wife is indisposed. which means she was passed out again like every other night they was there, and he's gonna get her some stomach medicine. So off he goes in the little Porsche they come in, and that's the last we see of 'em. Next morning she comes down and try to put on this big act, but all day she's getting paler and paler, and Mr. Ullman asks her sort of diplomatic like, would she like him to notify the state cops just in case maybe he had a little accident or something? She's on him like a cat. No, no, no. He's a fine driver. She isn't worried. Everything's under control. He'll be back by dinner. So that afternoon she steps into the Colorado around 3 and never has no dinner at all. She goes up to her room around 10:30, and that's the last time anybody ever saw her alive. What happened? County coroner said she took about 30 sleeping pills on top of all that booze. The husband showed up the next day, some big shot lawyer from New York. He gave old Ullman 4 different shades of holy hell. I'll sue this and I'll sue that, and when I'm through with you, you won't even be able to find a clean pair of underwear, stuff like that. But Ullman's good, the sucker. Ullman got him quieted down, probably asked that big shot how he'd like to see his wife splashed over the New York papers. Wife of prominent New York blah blah found dead with belly full of sleeping pills after playing hide the salami with a kid young enough to be her grandson. The state cops found the Porsche in the back of this all-night burger joint down in Lyons, and Ullman pulled a few strings to get it released to that lawyer. Then both of them ganged up on old Archer Houghton, which is the county coroner, and got him to change the verdict to accidental death. Heart attack. Now old Archer's driving a Chrysler. I don't begrudge him. A man's got to take it where he finds it, especially when he starts getting along in years. Out came the bandana. Honk, peek, out of sight. So what happens? About a week later, this stupid chambermaid, Dolores Vicky by name, she goes out with a shriek while she's making up the room where those two stay, and she faints dead away. When she comes back to, she says she's seen the dead woman in the bathtub, laying naked in the tub. Her face was all purple and puffy, she said, and she was grinning at me. So Ullman gave her 2 weeks' worth of walking papers and told her to get lost. I figure there's maybe 40-50 people died in this hotel since my grandfather opened it up for business in 1910. He looked shrewdly at Jack. You know how most of 'em go? Heart attack or stroke while they're banging the lady they're with. That's what these resorts get a lot of, old types that want one last fling. They come up here to the mountains to pretend they're 20 again. Sometimes something gives, and not all the guys. Yeah, something gives, and not all the guys who ran this place was as good as Ullman is at keeping it out of the papers. So the Overlook's got a reputation, yeah. I'll bet the Biltmore in New York City has got a reputation if you ask the right people. Once again, the accent is slipping. I'm sorry. But no ghost? Mr. Torrance, I've worked here all my life. I played here when I was a little kid, no older than your boy in that wallet snapshot you showed me. I never seen a ghost. You want to come out back with me? I'll show you the equipment shed. Fine. As Watson reached up to turn off the light, Jack said, there's sure a lot of papers down here. Oh, you're not kidding. Seems like they go back 1,000 years. Newspapers and old invoices and bills of lading and Christ knows what else. My dad used to keep up with them pretty good when we had the old wood burning furnace, but now they've got all out of hand. Some year I got to get a boy to haul them all down to Sidewinder and burn them. If Ullman will stand the expense. I guess if he will if I haul a rat loud enough. Then there are rats? Yeah, I guess there's some. I got the traps and the poison Mr. Ullman wants you to use up in the attic and down here. You keep a good eye on your boy, Mr. Torrance. You wouldn't want nothing to happen to him. No, I sure wouldn't. Coming from Watson, the advice didn't sting. They went to the stairs and paused for a moment while Watson blew his nose again. You'll find all the tools you need out there and some you don't, I guess. And there's the shingles. Did Ullman tell you about that? Yes, he wants part of the west roof reshingled. He'll get the offer. He'll get all the for free out of you that he can, the fat little guy. And then whine around in the spring about how you didn't do the job half right. I told him that once right to his face, I said. Watson's words faded away to a comforting drone as they mounted the stairs. Jack Torrance looked back over his shoulder once into the impenetrable, musty-smelling darkness, and thought that if there were ever a place that should have ghosts, this was it. He thought of Grady looking in by the soft, implacable snow, going quietly berserk and committing his atrocity. Did they scream, he wondered? Poor Grady, feeling it close in on him more every day, and knowing at last that for him spring would never come. He shouldn't have been here, and he shouldn't have lost his temper. As he followed Watson through the door, the words echoed back to him like a knell, accompanied by a sharp snap, like a pencil breaking lead. Dear God, he could use a drink, or 1,000 of them. So that was chapter 3. I'm going to eat right fast and then come back with 4. And I will try to censor myself as much as I possibly can, but sometimes there's no way to avoid it. Alright, thanks a lot.